Billy the Kid was 18 years old when Jesse Evans put a price on his head. Evans was 23, had killed 7 men, and rode with the most feared gang in New Mexico territory. They met in a saloon in Lincoln on March 9, 1878. Billy walked in alone. Evans had 5 men at his back. 3 hours later, Evans was riding hard for the Texas border and wouldn't stop for 3 days straight. What happened in that saloon turned 2 gunslingers into the deadliest rivals in the Lincoln County War. This wasn't a random fight. This was the moment the entire territory chose sides. Jesse Evans ran the Boys Gang. They worked for Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan, the 2 men who controlled Lincoln County like a personal kingdom. They owned the store, the bank, and the law. Anyone who challenged them ended up dead or bankrupt. Evans was their enforcer. When Murphy and Dolan wanted someone scared, they sent Evans. When they wanted someone dead, Evans brought his gang. Billy the Kid worked for John Tunstall, a British rancher who made one fatal mistake. He opened a competing store. In the Old West, competition wasn't handled with price wars. Tunstall was 24 years old, educated, and believed the law would protect him. Billy tried to warn him. Tunstall didn't listen. On February 18, 1878, Jesse Evans and his boys found Tunstall on the road outside Lincoln. They surrounded him. Tunstall was unarmed. Evans shot him in the chest, then in the head to make sure. They killed his horse too, then laid Tunstall's hat under the horse's head like a pillow. It was a message. This is what happens when you challenge Murphy and Dolan. Billy the Kid found the body. Tunstall was the first person who'd treated Billy like he mattered, the first person who'd paid him fair wages and didn't ask about his past. Billy knelt in the dirt next to Tunstall's body and made a promise. He was going to kill every man who'd been on that road. Jesse Evans heard about the promise. He laughed. Billy the Kid was a ranch hand with a reputation for being fast with cards and a Winchester, but Evans had killed men since he was 16. He had a gang. He had Murphy and Dolan's money and protection. Billy had nothing but anger and a dead boss. Evans did something that would haunt him for the rest of his short life. He put out word that he'd pay $50 to anyone who brought him Billy the Kid's body. Not alive, dead. $50 was 2 months' wages for a cowboy. It was enough to make desperate men take stupid chances. The bounty made Billy famous overnight. Every drunk with a gun and empty pockets started looking for an 18-year-old kid with a slight build and a crooked smile. Billy couldn't walk into a town without someone sizing him up, wondering if they could take him. The bounty also made Billy something else. It made him careful, calculating, and absolutely lethal. By early March, Billy had formed his own group. They called themselves the Regulators. Officially, they were deputized to arrest Tunstall's killers. Unofficially, they were a death squad. Billy wasn't the leader. That was Dick Brewer, a foreman from Tunstall's ranch. But everyone knew Billy was the most dangerous one. He was young, fast, and had nothing to lose. Men with nothing to lose don't hesitate. The Regulators started hunting Evans and his boys. They caught one of them, a man named Billy Morton, on March 6th. Morton begged for his life, promised to testify against Evans and the others. The Regulators took him prisoner. 2 days later, Morton's body was found on the trail with 11 bullet holes. The Regulators claimed he'd tried to escape. No one believed them. No one cared. This was war now. Jesse Evans knew Billy would come for him. The question was when and where. Evans had the advantage. He had more men, better guns, and the law on his side. Sheriff William Brady worked for Murphy and Dolan. If Billy killed Evans, Brady would hang him for murder. If Evans killed Billy, Brady would call it self-defense. On March 9, 1878, Evans rode into Lincoln with 5 of his boys. They were loud, drunk, and confident. They'd heard Billy was in town, staying at Tunstall's old store. Evans wanted everyone to see him walking free on the same streets where Billy hid. He wanted Billy to know the bounty was real, and Evans wasn't scared of some teenage ranch hand who'd gotten lucky a few times. They went to the saloon around noon. The saloon in Lincoln wasn't fancy. Wooden bar, dirt floor, whiskey that tasted like kerosene. But it was where men went to hear news, make deals, and start fights. Evans and his boys took over the back corner. They had a clear view of the door. Anyone walking in would be silhouetted against the daylight, easy to see, easy to shoot. Evans was holding court, telling the story of how he'd killed Tunstall, making it funnier each time, how Tunstall had begged, how his voice had cracked, how pathetic he'd looked lying in the dirt. The boys laughed. The other patrons stayed quiet and kept their heads down. You didn't interrupt Jesse Evans when he was telling a story. That's when Billy the Kid walked in. He didn't burst through the door. He didn't announce himself. He just walked in like he was thirsty and wanted a drink. He was dressed like a ranch hand, worn pants, dusty shirt, gun belt sitting low on his hips. His revolver was a Colt .41 caliber Thunderer with a short barrel, perfect for close-range work. His face was calm. His hands were empty and visible. The saloon went completely silent. Evans stopped mid-sentence. His smile didn't fade right away. It took him a second to process who he was looking at. Billy the Kid. Alone. Walking straight toward the bar like Evans and 5 armed men weren't sitting 10 feet away. Billy ordered whiskey. The bartender's hand shook as he poured it. Billy didn't touch the glass. He just stood there, one hand resting on the bar, the other hanging loose near his gun. He was positioned so he could see Evans in the mirror behind the bar. "Heard you put a bounty on me," Billy said. His voice was conversational, like he was commenting on the weather. Evans recovered. He leaned back in his chair, hands on the table where Billy could see them. $50? You interested in turning yourself in? Wondered if you'd have the nerve to collect it yourself. One of Evans' boys laughed. Evans didn't. He was calculating. Billy was alone, but he'd walked in knowing Evans was here, knowing he'd be outnumbered. That meant Billy either had backup outside or he had a plan. Either way, shooting Billy right now would be messy. People would talk. Sheriff Brady might have to do something about it. "You got a lot of mouth for someone who's worth more dead than alive," Evans said. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you." Billy turned to face them. His hand still hung loose near his gun, but he hadn't touched it. "How much do you think you're worth? To Murphy? To Dolan? Think they'd pay $50 for your body? Or would they just replace you?" That hit. Evans' face darkened. The boys shifted in their seats. Billy had just said out loud what everyone knew. Evans was a tool. Murphy and Dolan used him to do their dirty work, and the second he became inconvenient, they'd throw him away. "Careful, boy." Evans's voice was low now, dangerous. "You're outnumbered." So was Tunstall. The air changed. That name, Tunstall, made this personal, made it about murder, not business. Evans' hand moved toward his gun, not fast, just resting on it, a warning. Billy didn't move. "You shot an unarmed man, put his hat under his horse's head like it was a joke. You remember that?" "I remember he owed money and wouldn't pay. He didn't owe anything, he just didn't bow to Murphy. Same thing in Lincoln County." Billy smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Not anymore. That's when Billy made his move, and it wasn't the move anyone expected. He didn't draw his gun. He picked up the whiskey glass with his left hand and threw it at Evans. Not at Evans' face, at his gun hand. The glass hit Evans' wrist just as Evans' fingers were closing on his revolver. The whiskey splashed. The glass shattered. Evans jerked back, more surprised than hurt. Billy drew while everyone was watching the glass. His Colt cleared leather in less than a second. The barrel came up smooth and steady, aimed dead center at Evans's chest. Billy's thumb cocked the hammer. The click was loud in the silent saloon. "Don't." Billy's voice was flat. "Any of you." The 5 boys froze. Their hands were on their guns, but none of them had cleared leather. Billy's gun was already pointed at Evans, and his finger was on the trigger. They knew the math. The first shot would kill Evans. The second and third shots would kill whoever moved next. Maybe all of them could get their guns out and shoot Billy, but at least 2 of them would die doing it. No one wanted to be first. Evans stared down the barrel of Billy's Colt. His face had gone pale. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had 5 men. Billy was alone. The odds were supposed to be on Evans's side. "Here's what's going to happen," Billy said. "You're going to stand up. All of you. You're going to walk out that door. You're going to get on your horses, and you're going to ride. You don't stop in Lincoln. You don't stop in Fort Sumner. You ride until you're out of Lincoln County." "And if we don't?" Evans' voice was steady, but his hand was still 6 inches from his gun. "Then I shoot you here, and your boys can explain to Murphy why they let it happen." Evans looked at his boys. They looked at Billy's gun. No one moved. "The bounty's still good," Evans said. "Then you better hope someone collects it before I collect mine." Billy took a step back toward the door, gun still raised. "On your feet. Now." Evans stood slowly. The boys followed. They kept their hands visible, away from their guns. Billy kept backing toward the door, his Colt tracking Evans the whole way. "This isn't over," Evans said. "No," Billy agreed. "It's not. Next time you see me, I'll be the last thing you see." Billy backed out of the saloon into the sunlight. His horse was tied right outside, saddled and ready. He mounted one-handed, gun still aimed at the doorway. Evans and his boys appeared in the doorway. They watched Billy wheel his horse around and ride slowly down the street, his gun still in his hand until he turned the corner. The moment Billy disappeared, Evans' face went from pale to red. He screamed at his boys, called them cowards, asked why they'd let one kid back them down. The boys didn't answer. They'd seen Billy's eyes. They'd seen how steady his hand was. They knew the truth. Billy hadn't been bluffing. He would have shot Evans and died taking at least 2 more with him. That kind of certainty was more dangerous than any number of guns. Evans didn't stay in Lincoln. He got on his horse and rode. His boys followed. They rode hard, pushing their horses past exhaustion. They didn't stop in Fort Sumner. They didn't stop at any of the ranches where they normally rested. They rode for 3 days, barely sleeping, looking over their shoulders the whole time. Evans was convinced Billy would come after him. Every shadow was a threat. Every sound was Billy's horse. Word spread fast. Billy the Kid had walked into a saloon, faced down Jesse Evans and 5 armed men, and walked out alive. Evans, the man who'd killed 7 men and put a bounty on Billy's head, had run. The story grew with each telling. Some said Billy had disarmed Evans without firing a shot. Others said he'd shot the glass out of Evans' hand. The truth was almost as unbelievable as the legend. The confrontation changed everything. Before the saloon, people saw the Lincoln County War as Murphy and Dolan against a few stubborn ranchers. After the saloon, it became Billy the Kid against Jesse Evans. 2 young gunslingers, both deadly, both fearless, both convinced they'd be the one to kill the other. Murphy and Dolan were furious. They'd paid Evans to handle Billy, and instead, Evans had been humiliated. They replaced Evans as their primary enforcer, though Evans and his boys kept working for them. The bounty stayed active, $50 for Billy the Kid, dead. Billy didn't run. He stayed in Lincoln County and kept hunting the men who'd killed Tunstall. On April 1st, less than a month after the saloon confrontation, the Regulators ambushed Sheriff Brady on the main street of Lincoln. Brady had been at the meeting where Tunstall's murder was planned. Billy shot him 4 times. Brady died in the street. The law now wanted Billy for murder. Evans and Billy crossed paths twice more during the Lincoln County War. The first time was at a ranch where the 2 groups happened to stop on the same night. They glared at each other across the campfire, but didn't draw. Both sides knew shooting would mean mutual destruction. The second time was during the 5-day Battle of Lincoln in July 1878, where the Regulators barricaded themselves in a building, and Evans's gang tried to burn them out. Bullets flew. Men died. But Evans and Billy never got their direct confrontation. The war ended in a stalemate. The federal government sent troops to restore order. Murphy died of illness in 1878. Dolan went bankrupt. The Regulators scattered. Some went to prison. Some were killed. Some disappeared into Mexico or Texas. Jesse Evans vanished from history in 1882. Some say he was killed in a gunfight in Texas. Others claim he changed his name and lived to old age. No one knows for sure. His death, if it happened, wasn't noteworthy enough to make the newspapers. The man who'd once been the most feared gunman in New Mexico territory disappeared without a legend. Billy the Kid became famous. The saloon confrontation was one of dozens of stories about him. The escapes, the gunfights, the impossible odds he survived. But people remembered the saloon because it was pure Billy. Outnumbered, outgunned, and absolutely unwilling to back down. He'd walked into a room full of men who wanted him dead and walked out in control. Pat Garrett killed Billy on July 14, 1881. Billy was 21 years old. He'd been running for 3 years, surviving impossible odds, making enemies and legends in equal measure. When Garrett pulled the trigger, he ended one of the strangest, most violent stories in Old West history. But that moment in the saloon in March 1878, Billy staring down Evans and 5 armed men, backing them down with nothing but nerve and a well-aimed Colt, that was the moment people realized Billy the Kid wasn't just another gunslinger. He was something different, something dangerous. The saloon still stands in Lincoln, New Mexico. It's a museum now. You can walk into the same room where Billy faced down Jesse Evans. You can see where the bar stood, where Evans sat, where Billy made his stand. The building survived when most of the others burned. It's fitting. That confrontation survived too, passed down through generations as proof that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest gang or the most guns. Sometimes it's a teenager who refuses to be scared. Historical records confirm Evans put a bounty on Billy. Court documents and newspaper accounts from 1878 detail the confrontation, though details vary depending on who told the story. The Regulators' activities, Sheriff Brady's murder, and the Lincoln County War are well documented in territorial records and federal reports. Billy the Kid faced impossible odds more than once in his short life. But the Saloon confrontation with Jesse Evans was different. He didn't win because he was faster or a better shot. He won because he understood something Evans didn't. In a standoff, the man willing to die has all the power. Evans rode for 3 days because he finally understood what he was up against. Not a kid, not a lucky gunslinger, someone who'd made a promise over a dead friend's body and would burn down the whole territory to keep it. That's the kind of enemy you run from.